All right, so in the last video, we stopped here with this using properties of equality and how we can set up two-column proofs as we're doing this. So like I said, we're going to start with some algebraic proofs because you guys should be familiar with solving equations algebraically. So as a reminder, the left side is our statements or our steps. So this would be like when you had to show your work in Algebra 1, that would be what you would write down there as the statements. And then the right side is your reasons that justify each step. So the reasons, again, can be properties that we've learned. They can be definitions. They can be postulates. Or they can be theorems. The only other thing that we are going to see besides these four things in that right-hand column as a reason would be given. So typically when you're doing a proof, you're given some sort of information to start with. So as we go through this, we are going to use this list of equalities that we filled out last time to kind of go through some of these examples. Now these ones here, I gave you some drag and drop stuff to help a little bit. So left-hand side, we have our statements. This is going to be where we kind of show our work. And then the right side is going to be the reasons or the rules that we use to justify each step. So given that 9 minus 4x equals negative 19, prove that x equals 7. So I'm always going to start with what's given. So in this case, I'm given that 9 minus 4x equals negative 19. Okay, I'm given that right here. That goes in my first statement. Now from here, my next step is going to be subtracting 9 on both sides. That's going to leave me with negative 4x equals negative 28. Now the reason I can do that is the subtraction property of equality. Okay, the things happening behind the scenes here that we don't see is that we subtracted 9 from both sides to get that step. Okay, but now we don't have to actually write it out. We just have to write the step that we ended up, or write what we ended up with. And then finally, I get to where I'm proving that x equals 7, and this would be my division property of equality, because again, that invisible math that's happening behind the scenes here is that I'm dividing both sides by negative 4 so that I get x equals 7. Okay, so when we have the number of boxes already there for us, and when we have some drag and drop, we have some hints and some ideas as to what we need to do. So if we look at another one here, again, we're going to start with what's given. So my reasons, x minus 3 divided by 6 equals negative 2 is given. Now for this one here, if I were solving it, I need to then get rid of this divided by 6, or the 6 in the denominator. And the way that I'm going to do that is to multiply both sides by 6. Okay, so I would be multiplying both sides by 6, and then I would end up with x minus 3 equals negative 12. Okay, this, when we multiply both sides by the same thing, that's our multiplication property of equality. But when we're writing proofs, we don't need those pieces in there. We just need the results from each step as we go through in our statements, and then we need the rule or the property or justification on the right-hand side. So finally, I get to the point now here, I'm at my last bar, that's where I get to where I'm proving. So here I've proven that x equals negative 9 by adding 3 to both sides. That's going to be my addition property of equality. Okay, so the stuff on the left here, this actual solving these linear equations, should be something that we know how to do. Okay, we reviewed it a lot at the beginning of the year. You should have done a lot of it in Algebra 1. This is the only new part that we're looking at, is those statements or reasons. So if we go into another one, it's a little bit more complex. We've got now 4 statements that we're going to have, but we're still going to start with our given. So negative 3 times 4x plus 1 equals 21 is what I'm going to start with there. And my reason is that it's given to me. Now from here, and again, we have some choices down at the bottom here. If I'm solving this, which one of these is going to come next? Well, it's going to be this one here. This negative 12x minus 3 equals negative 21. So how did we get that? We had to distribute, which means that my reason or my justification is the distributive property. That's the property that I use that told me that I can multiply that negative 3 to each term inside those parentheses to simplify it. Now from here I have a two-step equation, so my next step, I'm going to erase these rainbows since we don't need those anymore. My next step would be to add 3 to both sides. So once I add 3 to both sides, because remember, we don't have to show the actual adding of 3 to both sides anymore. We show what happens once we do. I get negative 12x equals 24. Adding the same thing to both sides and saying they're still equal is my addition property of equality. And that brings me down to the bottom where I have to prove that x equals negative 2. So I get down to x equals negative 2. Now, how did I go from step 3 to step 4? I divided both sides by negative 12, which would be my division property of equality. Okay, we'll go through one more of these right now. Okay, another one that's a little bit longer, but we're still same steps. We're going to start with what's given to us. So what's given is that 28 minus 6x equals 2x minus 84. Okay, and my justification or my reason is that it's given. Now, what is my next step going to be? Well, I've got an x on both sides of the equal sign, so my next step is going to be to get only one x left. So I can do that by subtracting 2x from both sides. And that would leave me with 28 minus 8x equals negative 84. So subtracting the same thing from both sides is my subtraction property of equality. Again, we don't have to show those steps. We just need to know that that's what's happening. So now from here, my next step in isolating that x is to get rid of the 28 out front. So I'm going to do that by subtracting 28 from both sides. It would be my subtraction property of equality again. And I'm left with negative 8x equals negative 112. And again, now we're down to the last step where we have to prove that x equals 14. So I can say that x equals 14 because once I divide both of those sides by negative 8, I end up with a positive 14. That would be my division property of equality. So we're going to save the last few. Those ones are a little tricky, so we'll hold on to those until we get to the next video to kind of break it up a little bit.